Today I'm here with one of the hottest names in pickleball, Garnett, a gifted racket athlete. He played D1 tennis for Santa Clara University and was a US Open hitting partner for Novak Djokovic. He won silver in both singles and doubles in his first pro tournament, an almost unheard of achievement. Coming from the investment banking world, Connor has dove completely into pickleball. He's currently the fourth ranked singles player, 20th ranked mixed player, and 21st ranked doubles player in the PPA tour, and has a really bright future ahead of him. So thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for having me and stoked to be a part of this.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. You're a top player all around, but it's no secret you're a singles specialist. So what about your singles game makes it so lethal?
Yeah, I think coming from tennis, everyone just naturally gravitates to singles more. There's a little bit more of the one-to-one of just having good, solid technique on the ground strokes. And I always in tennis really loved my passing shots. And so singles really with the paddle I have, I'm able to get some good angles and hit through the ball. And my athleticism kind of complements that as well. And those are kind of the things that set my singles game apart.
That's awesome. Um, so, while on a recreational level, doubles is by far a more common style play than singles. And even at a pro level, there are tons of pros who play doubles and singles, many that play doubles only, but a few that only play singles. It's clear that opposite from tennis, singles clearly receives a little bit less spotlight and participation than doubles. But I'm curious from your perspective as a top singles player, what do you see for the future of singles in the pro pickleball world? And what do you think can be done to keep it thriving and growing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about pickleball is doubles has a lot of strategy, so it's always going to have a strong place, and it's always going to be very interesting watching some of those slow to fast moments. But singles, as the sport has developed, even when I first started, the athleticism coming into the sport is very impressive. And so the more and more you get these athletes coming into the sport that are able to cover a vast amount of the court, you're going to see more interest from the viewers just because they're going to be able to do crazy things like around the post and other things that you might not see as much in doubles, or some of those crazy jumping shots or whatever that might be, which I think will continue to boost viewership of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any thoughts about the way singles might continue to evolve in factoring into MLP, where right now it doesn't have a huge standing and it does in PPA, but I'm not sure where they see that evolving. What are your thoughts in generally in the pro scene in terms of the spotlight, whether it's prize money or just participation, and the focus that they're putting on singles and how that might evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about pickleball is no one really has any idea what the future is going to hold. But with singles continuing to grow, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in some of these events, like an MLP, there's maybe a singles specialist, or there's something where it counts for a little bit more. And some of the like there's some form of dream breaker that goes on after singles or stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of cool ways that you could get singles involved, whether there's different events that have more of an emphasis on singles and certain events that have more of an emphasis on doubles. I think really the sky is the limit. And the coolest thing about pickleball is the people who are kind of in charge can take it in a lot of different ways. And no one really knows what that future is going to look like.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true. Um, so you're known partially for your two-handed backhand. It's a really, really top-notch, top of the game backhand. Curious, what tactics do you use to be able to generate a lot of power while also keeping up really high accuracy? And that's sort of one question. And the other is, what do most people just not realize about the two-handed backhand?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just starting out, like kind of the two-handed backhand, a lot of people like in tennis or other racket sports, the one-hander gives you a lot of power, but where the two-hander kind of shines is with the control. And so I've had a lot of people kind of bug me about the two-hander, and I actually created a YouTube video that's coming out shortly on it. But it that forced me to kind of think of like what makes my two-hander kind of different, and look at like some other two-handers. And some of the things that I've found is I put my left finger, so I'm a right-handed player. I'll put my left finger, pointer finger, on the back of the paddle to give myself a little more control. And then it's really trying to keep a lot of the extraneous motion limited. So it's getting that kind of kinetic chain involved. But unlike tennis, not really using a lot of the arms to swing. It's just a very compact motion and slowing it down and kind of hitting those spots, because accuracy trumps power in 90% of the cases with most shots in pickleball.
Yeah, and I've seen you play a bit, and I think one thing about your two-handed backhand and a lot of really high-level two-handed backhands from ex-tennis players is that you guys have really strong footwork, and you're able to get very, very close to the ball to be able to kind of grip those angles to get around the ball, because with a two-hander you have less flexibility. With a one-hander, even if you're a little bit flat-footed, you're not as close to the ball, you have more reach, more wrist. You can kind of, you can connect with the ball even if you're not in the perfect spot. With the two-hander, while you get all that control, you really need to be set up and planted near the ball so you can actually get around it to create those angles. So do you have a very specific emphasis on footwork when it comes to two-hander?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think that's really evident at the kitchen line. You look at like a me or a James as kind of two examples that come to mind. And just, I feel like a lot of the pictures that PPA or some of these leagues have taken of me when I'm on that line, like my legs are very low and everything is very compact. And you'll see James do that as well. And you just have to be so active and using that kind of lower body to get yourself in the position to generate that power. But no, I completely agree with that.
So, as I previously mentioned, you were a hitting partner for one of the greatest and now very likely unanimous greatest players of all time in tennis, Novak Djokovic. So, I'm curious if you have any interesting stories, anything stood out from playing with him, and then also what's something about Novak that most people might not know?
Yeah, so I was really lucky to get that role. There was actually another hitting partner that was supposed to be there and he wasn't able to. So when I was at the Open, they called me and I was on the like far other side of the ground. And so I was like, yeah, I can be there in like 2 minutes. And I just started sprinting to this court to hit with Djokovic. But he comes on the court and I'll never forget. We were next to like, I think it was the ESPN booth. And I am on the court. He's walking over. Everyone in the ESPN booth turns and they're like, "Oh, Novak!" And it was just like this cool, like you're here with one of these top tennis players, and he's just such a big deal. You're seeing him in his element, and it was really cool. We started hitting a little bit after that, and his game, I would say, probably the thing that I noticed that was different than anyone else that I had hit with was the depth of his shot just effortlessly put me in a lot more pressure than anyone else. And it had nothing to do with the pace, because there were other guys that I was hitting with, like Monfils was cracking the ball, but his just every shot was just so close to that baseline. It just put this pressure on you that really was kind of unmatched.
Yeah, no, I that's really interesting. And I would stay on Novak, but that actually makes me think of something that really applies to pickleball as well, which is this idea of depth. People think I gotta, especially in a serve and a serve return, where you have a lot of time to figure out what you want to do on a drive or sort of a full court shot. People think, okay, I gotta hit it hard, or I gotta hit it with a topspin, or I gotta hit with slice, where arguably the more important than all those things is to just have that ball bounce deep. Do you think depth on something like a serve or a return or even a passing shot, would you say depth is more important than slice, topspin, power most of the time?
Yeah, without a doubt on the serve and return, like that depth is so key. And I think like the last couple months in singles, you're really starting to see the depth playing a large part in people's games and how they're practicing and just the focus that's being put on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you're from Seattle. That's the birthplace of pickleball. I'm just curious if you have any personal links to the backstory that really got the sport going, or any relationships with anybody that was part of the founding of the sport, or if it's just another kind of cool attribute.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing was when I was young, my aunt had a beach house in Washington with a pickleball court on it, and so I don't know if we were playing by the correct rules. I just remember we were playing with a wiffle ball, and we kept missing, and there was like a hill behind that. We always had to go chase the ball, but yeah, there was definitely pickleball around in kind of Washington all the time, and there was just, I think most places there was always some form of a racket sport that you could play, which is really cool about being from there.
So what age were you when you first played pickleball?
I honestly have no idea, and I don't even like. I'm hesitant to say if it was even pickle. It was just like uh some form of net and ball, but it was probably like 8 maybe. I think we would go up there maybe like we went up there a couple times, so I probably played on the court maybe like 3 or 4 times.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, but super cool. I mean, it's cool that it's from Washington, and there's just like you think about the wooden paddles, and one of my cousins actually had one of like the really old paddles from Washington, one of the companies that were making out of Washington. I forget the name, but he had one of those paddles, and so just looking back, it's like there are all these connections as you kind of dig into it. Like, oh, like being in the birthplace, like these people knew this person or whatever it may be, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Another big topic that people really are just consistently talking about with pickleball is obviously the growth, especially on the recreational side. You know, many people, including myself, believe that in the next 3+ years it'll be the most played sport in the country. You know, whether it cracks the top 10 for people 25 and under or 30 and under, it doesn't really matter much because I think with the 35, 40 plus range, it's going to continue to be more and more dominant. So I'm curious your thoughts on the growth of pickleball. Are there any specific demographics, whether it's age or parts of the country or parts of the world or any other groups of people that you think there's a high potential for pickleball to grow within that we're not seeing that current growth in right now?
I think, and I haven't like looked super closely, so I could be a little off base here, but kind of how I'm looking at it is the junior side of things is going to be the next kind of big wave. Like you're starting to see some like 10 to 14-year-old kids get into pickleball, but there hasn't been this like these academies and the mass adoption of it. And so once that starts taking place, I think now you have parents dropping off their kids, they're going to be playing, and I think you kind of encompass the whole family, and that's when pickleball is going to kind of take even another step.
Yep. Yep. I think for a while it was all about, you know, even for people that currently play, it was let's just go play pickleball, let's do open play, let's have leagues. The academy teaching side of it is something that it hasn't been as you know, well built out. That's kind of a little bit of the backstory of myself and my co-founder Matt for the pickleball clinic. We run a pickleball academy in Montclair, New Jersey. We, you know, expanded it to 3 locations around New Jersey. We're building a facility, and really the bread and butter of what we do is we run clinics, you know, anywhere from 8 to 30 adults. It's a different perspective. It's not just come play, it's come and learn. And I think that's trickling down to younger kids. And that's what's really exciting players around the country is now, whether it's players like yourself teaching clinics or other coaches that are getting certified, you know, there's a craze to actually try and learn and get good. And so that's going to really be exciting to see evolve.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's definitely the next frontier. And it's awesome that you guys are doing that. And once there's that like drilling focus and all of that stuff too, it's really going to start turning into a professional sport.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of an interesting question. You know, in college, at Santa Clara, you were vice president and president of the student athlete advisory committee. And,
Mhm.
you know, presumably here you took an active role in advocating on behalf of your fellow athletes. I'd be curious for a second if you could put back on your athlete advisory hat. Is there anything you would advise your fellow pro players to do or ask their respective pro tours to do so they can be best situated throughout their pro pickleball careers?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a tricky question just because the sport is so new. There isn't that kind of level of, I guess, level of organization. And so I think that's kind of the big thing is like with this merger, it's great because now they're getting together. And so you're going to start to see a lot more organization. But until that is set up, it's tough to kind of have meaningful change because it's got to be unified across the whole sport or the whole tour.
Yeah. When you saw that notification or you were told by somebody that this merger was taking place, what was your reaction to the merger?
Yeah, I mean, I regardless of what happened, I always wanted to be playing against the top guys, and so if it was split or if there was a merger, I wanted to make sure that I would be able to play against Ben if he's on the PPA. I would be able to play against Tyson or whoever on the MLP side. So I think it's great for the sport. I'm stoked. As a competitor, I'm always going to be wanting to compete against the top players. And so this makes it a heck of a lot easier to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Do you have any general ideas from the general perspective of the pro players on everyone else's sort of thoughts and energy towards the merger? Is everybody super excited? Let's jump in. Are there some people that are reluctant? Are there people wondering what's up with the APP? What's going on? Is everybody on the same page? What else do you kind of have on the general consensus of sort of the pro players?
Yeah, I think it's very mixed. I think there's just a lot of chaos right now of it, and I think in 2 weeks, once the dust settles, it'll be a lot clearer. But right now, I think it's still so new and so fresh that there are a lot of different emotions.
Yeah, I agree. So just a couple more questions. In the investment banking world, you're here to, evaluate assets and assess growth opportunities, risk, attributes behind why something has potential or why it doesn't. What makes pickleball such a valuable target for those looking to invest their time, their money, their careers, their attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on where you're looking to invest in pickleball. I mean, you have the tours themselves, which with the growth of just like people playing it, there's a lot of opportunity there to continue growing. And so I would say that's something that you're going to have to look at with pickleball. And so getting on that side, there's a lot of dollars coming in from the amateur side, and that's how I would be looking at that. There's more celebrity investment. There are more eyeballs, and as more eyeballs and viewership starts hitting it, then it's going to be worth more and more. And then you have kind of the players, the paddle companies, you have all these other things. And so there's just a lot of different avenues that you can get into, and that's one of the coolest things about pickleball is there's not just one path to being profitable. And so when people are looking to get in from a business side, there are just so many different growth opportunities to evaluate. And so I just think that there's going to be continued interest, continued excitement from all different walks of life getting into it on the business side as well.
Let's say somebody came to you and said, Hunter, I want to get involved in the business side of pickleball. Where should I start? What should I look to do? What would your general piece of advice be?
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything, you got to really understand the sport. And so I think you got to evaluate it kind of in a couple folds. Like, where are the money makers? Which it looks like the tour is, you can make a ton of money off that. Like, the players are starting to make good money now. So it's like, how do you get in that side of it? And then the equipment. And then I guess the fourth thing would be like the TV deals, which kind of goes along with the tours. And so looking at those things, just looking at I've never looked at like the PPA's profit margin or anything like that, but that would be something that is interesting as well. And so you'd kind of have to look at that if I was to go fully geek out on the analytics of it. But I mean, for me, I think the tours are doing a great job with it.
Right. Absolutely. No, I agree. Would you rather win a match 11-0, 11-0, or 12-10, 12-10?
Uh, Depends on what round of the tournament it is. Early on, I'd rather get it done quickly, but there's something to be said about having like a great final.
Right.
Like when I played Ben in Seattle, that was a pretty awesome match, and I didn't walk away with it, but I think those matches where you just barely squeak by are some of the more memorable ones that you'll hold on to for a while.
Yeah. Last question. I try and always ask this to anybody significant in the pickleball world. Why do you love pickleball?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple reasons. One, it gave me a fresh kind of sport to get into where I could continue learning. And so tennis, when I was doing investment banking, I was kind of always chasing my college level, where now I am able to constantly be improving in pickleball, which as someone like I'm always trying to learn new things. And so this was a great avenue for that. And that's what kind of piqued my interest in pickleball. And then just seeing the community, being able to meet all these cool people, travel, have fun, like, and just really have like a path where I didn't know what tomorrow is going to look like, and just having fun traveling. It's basically just kind of this unlimited opportunity, which is what is super exciting about it to me.
Absolutely. I agree. It's super exciting to all of us, and we're excited to, watch you on your journey and see where the sport and everything else evolves. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah, no, really appreciate the time.